Emily Carter sat at her desk in the office of the comptroller of the currency, surrounded by neat stacks of compliance reports. Her cubicle was tidy, quiet, and forgettable, just like the image her family had always painted of her. Emily, the safe one with the little government job, they'd say. Nothing flashy, nothing interesting. She sipped her coffee, scrolling through a spreadsheet, when her personal phone buzzed beside her keyboard. A new email notification appeared on the screen subject line. Credit alert, new inquiry reported. Her stomach tightened slightly, though her face showed nothing. She tapped the notification. A new inquiry has been reported by First Atlantic Trust, the alert read. The bank name meant nothing to her. So she didn't panic. Years of training as a senior financial investigator had taught her not to. Instead, a quiet, cold focus settled over her. Her mind shifted automatically into investigative mode. Someone made the first move, she murmured under her breath. The name of the bank, the timing, the unknown inquiry. None of it was random. She felt it instantly, the same way a detective senses a crime scene before seeing one. Her mind flashed back to Easter brunch 2 weeks ago at her parents' home in Arlington. Her sister Clara had arrived late as usual, her heels clicking across the marble floor. She wore a designer coat that screamed money. Sorry, traffic from Georgetown was awful, Clara had said, tossing her keys onto the counter, the Range Rover fob glinting. Their parents had beamed at her as always. The Hamilton portfolio doubled this quarter, Clara bragged, her voice loud enough for the entire house. We're restructuring the tech division. Their father had nodded proudly while their mother clapped her hands. That's wonderful, darling. Then, as always, Clara turned her attention to Emily, her tone dripping with practiced sweetness. Still processing forms for the Treasury, Em? You should live a little. Their parents laughed softly, not cruelly but carelessly, and Emily smiled faintly, pretending not to care. That night, from the kitchen window, she'd watched her sister drive away in her new Range Rover. $68,000 worth of luxury gleaming under the porch lights. Clara's spending had been wild lately, luxury trips, handbags, and dinners at rooftop lounges. It didn't make sense for someone earning a mid-level salary. But now, with that credit alert sitting on her phone, it made perfect sense. Emily stood up quietly and walked toward one of the small soundproof meeting rooms. She closed the door and called her sister. Hey, Em, Clara answered on the fourth ring, her tone bright and hurried. I'm about to head into a meeting. What's up? Emily's voice stayed calm. I got a weird credit alert. Did you use my name for something? Maybe by mistake. Clara laughed, a sharp, careless sound. You're paranoid. You work around criminals all day, it's getting to your head. Must be boring over there. So, that's a no? Emily asked softly. Of course it's a no. Gotta run, bye. The line went dead. Emily lowered her phone slowly. Her reflection in the glass door had changed. Gone was the quiet sister. What looked back now was the investigator, calm, focused, and ready. Emily returned to her desk without a sound. Around her, the hum of printers and quiet phone calls filled the open floor. She logged into her secure government terminal, the kind of system that few people outside the Treasury even knew existed. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before she began a new internal case file. The title field blinked at her. She typed, Carter, Emily, Unauthorized Credit Inquiry Investigation. Her jaw tightened. This wasn't just about a credit check. This was about someone crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She began documenting every detail. The date, the bank, the alert, and the phone call with Clara. She typed each word with surgical precision, the way a surgeon might make an incision. By the time Emily finished, the office was nearly empty. The sky outside the window had turned a deep shade of violet. Most of her co-workers had gone home hours ago. She saved the file under a temporary directory and shut down her system. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead as she gathered her things. This was no longer a family misunderstanding. It was an investigation. As she walked through the parking garage toward her old silver Subaru, she felt oddly calm. The quiet one with the boring job, she murmured to herself. Let's see how boring I really am. The next morning, Emily arrived at work earlier than usual. She poured a cup of black coffee and sat down at her terminal, her expression unreadable. Within minutes, she pulled up her full credit report through her government-secured access. The moment the data loaded, her breath caught. No, she whispered. It wasn't just an inquiry. A $90,000 personal loan had been approved under her name 3 days earlier through First Atlantic Trust. Every detail matched: her address, her social security number, even her income, though it had been exaggerated. She opened the digital application and zoomed in on the signature. A looping imitation of her name sprawled across the page. The slant was wrong. The handwriting was careless, arrogant. "You didn't even try," Emily whispered. For a few seconds she sat perfectly still, her heart beating quietly in her chest. She wasn't just angry, she was calculating. If the $90,000 loan went unpaid or was reported delinquent, it would destroy her spotless credit history and jeopardize her federal security clearance. Her entire career, the foundation of her independence, would vanish overnight. Clara hadn't just stolen her identity. She'd endangered her life's work. Emily rubbed her temples slowly. Every childhood memory of being overlooked flickered through her mind. Clara's piano recitals, her father's praise, her mother's endless pride in the brilliant daughter. They'd built this entitlement brick by brick. Now Clara had turned it into a weapon. Emily's instinct was to call the bank immediately, to shout, to demand the loan be frozen. Her hand even reached for her phone, but she stopped halfway. No, that's what Clara would expect. If Emily disputed the charge, her sister would be alerted. She'd cover her tracks, delete emails, and spin another story to their parents about how poor Emily misunderstood something again. Emily leaned back in her chair and exhaled. "Not this time," she murmured. She opened a new secure folder and began collecting digital evidence. Screenshots of the forged application, the inflated income, the transaction record. Each file was labeled, dated, and encrypted. This wasn't anger driving her anymore. It was precision. The quiet one had started building her case. By noon, Emily had gathered everything she needed to start tracing the digital footprint. She opened Clara's public social media accounts, the ones she used like a trophy case. Photos filled the screen: luxury brunches, designer handbags, champagne flutes balanced on manicured nails. Then one post stopped Emily cold. A selfie taken inside a brand new penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The caption read, "Just picked up the keys. Penthouse life. Blessed." Emily checked the date. The post was exactly 1 day after the loan had been funded. "There it is," she said softly, almost admiring the boldness. "You signed your own confession." She opened public property records next. Within minutes she found the deed, registered in Clara's name, purchased 3 days earlier. The down payment? $85,000. Emily leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. $90,000 loan, she muttered. 85 down, 5 left for the bag and champagne. The pieces fit together perfectly. She saved everything in chronological order. The inquiry alert, the loan approval, the property purchase, the social media post. When she looked at the folder, it no longer felt like family drama. It looked like evidence. That evening, Emily drove home in silence, the headlights cutting through the wet spring streets of Alexandria. Inside her apartment, she kicked off her shoes and sat on the couch. The television played softly in the background, but her mind was miles away. Her phone buzzed. Mom. She almost ignored it but then answered. "Hi, sweetheart," her mother said cheerfully. "Your sister bought the most gorgeous penthouse. She sent photos. Isn't she doing well?" Emily stared at the wall. "Yeah," she said flatly. "She's doing very well." Her mother laughed, oblivious. "You could learn a thing or two from her, Em. You've got to take risks if you want rewards." Emily's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. "I'll keep that in mind, Mom." The next morning, Emily woke early. She made coffee and sat at her small kitchen table reviewing her notes. The plan had to be airtight. She couldn't confront Clara yet, not until she had everything. Every timestamp, every signature, every screenshot had to stand on its own. She whispered to herself, "If you're going to fight a thief, fight like an auditor." She smiled faintly at the irony. Her sister had used her identity to live a luxury fantasy, while Emily was using her skill to take it apart piece by piece. The quiet sister had finally found her voice, and it spoke through documentation. Weeks passed. Emily said nothing to anyone. She went to work, processed reports, and waited. Each month she received new credit alerts showing the $90,000 loan payments being made, barely but consistently. Claire was being careful. Careful enough to avoid suspicion but arrogant enough to assume Emily had moved on. Emily kept logging every payment, every pattern. She knew the kind of arrogance she was dealing with, the kind that eventually talked too much. "You'll give it to me yourself," she whispered, closing her laptop one evening. "All I need is patience." 3 months later, her phone rang during a Tuesday afternoon meeting. It was her mother again. "Emily, darling," she said warmly. "We're having a family dinner this Friday. Clara has some exciting news to share. Everyone will be there." Emily's pen paused mid-note. "What kind of news?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "She wants to tell you herself," her mother replied in that familiar tone that meant the invitation wasn't optional. "Of course," Emily said calmly. "I'll be there." After hanging up, she sat perfectly still. This wasn't coincidence. Claire was about to brag. Friday night arrived damp and cool. Emily parked her Subaru a block from her parents' Arlington home and sat in silence for a moment. Through the windshield she could see Clara's Range Rover parked like a jewel in the driveway. She checked her phone, recording app armed and ready. Virginia is a one-party consent state, she reminded herself. She tucked the phone into her jacket pocket, took a deep breath and walked to the door. Her mother opened it before she could knock. "Emily, you made it." She smelled of white wine and expensive perfume. "Everyone's waiting." The dining room looked exactly as Emily remembered. Polished cherry table, crystal glasses, soft candlelight. Her father stood near the fireplace, sipping scotch. Clara was by the window, laughing too loudly, swirling her wine glass. "Look who finally made it," Clara said, her tone sugary. "The government must be running late tonight." Emily smiled. "Traffic on the bridge." She took her seat quietly. Dinner unfolded as expected. Small talk about work, vacations and golf. Clara basked in the attention, her voice dominating the room. Emily waited, calm and silent, her phone quietly recording from the table beside her water glass. Dessert arrived. Chocolate mousse, Clara's favorite. Emily's mother was mid-sentence when Clara tapped her fork against her glass. The sharp ring silenced everyone. "I actually have something to share," she announced dramatically. "A little secret." Her eyes locked on Emily's. "Funny story," she said, smiling. "I used your credit to get a $90,000 personal loan." The room froze. Her father's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Her mother blinked, confused. Clara laughed, leaning back in her chair. "Relax, Em. You've got flawless credit. I'm building your history. You should thank me." Emily looked at her sister evenly, her voice calm and measured. "That's bank fraud, Clara." "Oh, stop being dramatic," Clara said, rolling her eyes. "It's just paperwork. No one's going to care." "It's a federal crime," Emily replied softly. "Up to 30 years in prison and $1 million fine." Their father cleared his throat. "Now, Emily, I'm sure she didn't mean any harm." "She bought a penthouse with it," Emily interrupted. Clara's smile faltered for half a second. "How did you?" "Just curious," Emily said quietly. "Because that makes it wire fraud too." Silence fell like a heavy curtain over the room. The recording caught every breath. Emily rose from her chair slowly, her expression unreadable. "I should go," she said, setting down her napkin. "You're leaving already?" her mother asked, voice shaky. "I have an early meeting." Clara raised her glass with a smirk. "The wheels of government never stop turning, right, sis?" Emily nodded once, gathered her phone and walked out. The night air outside felt cool and cleansing. She sat in her Subaru for a long moment before starting the engine. The recording was perfect. Clear, direct, arrogant. It was everything she needed. She whispered, "Checkmate," before driving off toward her office. The Treasury building was nearly empty when Emily arrived. Only the security guard at the front desk looked up. "Late night, Miss Carter?" he asked. "Just need to finish something important," she said. Upstairs, under the hum of fluorescent lights, she logged into her government computer. She pulled up her case file, attached the audio recording, screenshots and all supporting documentation. Every word, every timestamp, every loan record. Organized, dated, verified. She added one final note. Subject has confessed to fraudulent use of personal credit. Then she transferred the file to the Joint Federal Task Force. When she clicked Submit, the system prompted, "Are you sure?" Emily exhaled and pressed yes. Monday morning came quietly. Emily walked into the office at 7:30 a.m., her steps steady, her face calm. On her desk sat a sealed manila envelope marked confidential. Inside was a memo. Case accepted. Referred to FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office for criminal review. Investigator Carter recused per policy. She folded the paper neatly and slipped it into her drawer. At 8:35 a.m. her phone rang. Deputy Director Harris would like to see you, his assistant said. Emily smoothed her blazer and made her way to the top floor. Harris was a tall man with gray hair and an expression that belonged to someone who'd seen it all. Sit, Carter, he said, gesturing to a chair. He opened a folder on his desk, her file. Clean work, he said. Chain of custody's flawless. We've sent it up the line. You're recused, effective immediately. He closed the folder and looked up at her. I'm sorry, it's your family. Emily nodded once. It's not personal anymore, sir. He gave a faint smile. That's what makes it good work. She left his office feeling both lighter and heavier. Justice was now in motion. Unstoppable, procedural, and beyond her control. That night, as Emily sat eating soup in her apartment, her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. Your sister says the FBI called her. What did you do, Emily? She set the phone down without answering. A second message came in minutes later. You'll ruin this family. Emily stared at the screen, her face blank. Then she took a screenshot and emailed it to the task force contact, labeling it post-investigation communication from associated parties. She blocked the number. Evidence was evidence even when it came from family. 2 days later, the news broke online. Local businesswoman arrested in federal fraud investigation. The photo accompanying the article showed Clara in handcuffs, being led from her penthouse garage by 2 agents in dark suits. Emily read the story once, then closed her laptop. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply returned to her compliance reports. Her coworker leaned over the cubicle wall. Hey, you okay? Fine, she said quietly. Just another case. No one in the office knew the full truth, and that was exactly how she wanted it. A week later, her parents came to her apartment unannounced. Her father's face was red, her mother's eyes swollen. They arrested your sister, he said. They said she used our names too. You work for the government. Fix this. Emily stood by the door, arms folded. I can't, she said evenly. Her father's voice rose. After all we've done for you, you'd destroy your own sister? Emily's tone never changed. She destroyed herself. Her mother sobbed softly. Please, Emily, she's family. Emily opened the door wider. So am I. The door closed gently behind them. 6 weeks later, Emily sat quietly in the back of a federal courtroom. The judge read the charges, 15 counts of bank fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. Clara sat at the defense table in a navy pantsuit, her hair dull, her confidence gone. When the prosecutor played the dinner recording, the sound of Clara's voice filled the courtroom. I used your credit to get a $90,000 loan. You should thank me. Gasps rippled through the audience. Clara couldn't meet Emily's eyes. For once, the silence between them wasn't power, it was consequence. When the verdict came, it was swift. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Clara to 9 years in federal prison, followed by restitution and a lifetime ban from financial employment. As the gavel fell, Clara finally looked back at Emily, wide-eyed, stunned, as if waiting to be saved. Emily didn't move. She watched her sister being led away in cuffs, her expression calm, almost serene. Justice, she thought, is quiet. It doesn't shout. It simply arrives and does its work. Months later, Emily was promoted to lead investigator on a new national fraud task force. She worked longer hours, traveled more, and spoke less. One evening, she visited her parents to help them file credit bureau corrections. They sat at the same dining table where Clara had once bragged about her crime. The trade lines will clear in 60 days, Emily explained professionally. Her mother nodded, unable to meet her eyes. As Emily packed her briefcase to leave, her father said softly, "We thought quiet meant weak. Turns out it meant disciplined." Emily smiled faintly. Sometimes the quiet ones make the loudest moves. She walked out into the cool night, the door clicking softly behind her. The quiet one with the safe job had rewritten the meaning of strength. Moral lesson: True strength doesn't come from revenge, it comes from discipline, integrity, and doing what's right even when it means standing alone. Thanks you for watching, and please remember to tell us where you are watching from today. Hit the like button, comment and subscribe to this channel for more of this.